Piano, Holmdel Soccer Club or Football Club. We've reached out to Agnes King as part of the Township Half Century Club, and Mr. Tom Fontana regarding the tennis facilities. We are still in search of or looking into a designee or representative that may have particular interest in either challenge or the disabled constituents and handicap accessibility type issues.
Thank you, Fred.
And may I add, are you looking into interviewing anyone about the Holmdel swim team or swim club?
The folks I recited are the folks that we have gotten feedback, suggestions, and encouragement to interview. I will suggest we won't, from my perspective, limit the number of interviewees. It's been crafted that we would do up to 10. I'd be happy to consider additional folks to this list if they're submitted and we vet the individual.
Okay. The survey was noticeably weak on references to the swim club, and I would strongly encourage you to solicit more input from the swim club. It is one of our largest recreational facilities in this township, the only significant revenue-bearing facility in this township that I'm aware of. And if you need help finding people, as a decades-old member, I'm willing to, but and/or to find others. Mr. Hines had met with a committee of us relative to the pool club and needs and concerns there, and I want to make sure that that is not overlooked in this process.
Could you recommend somebody from that facility or that group, and then we'll pass it on to Don, and we'll pass it on to Fran.
Okay.
We'll add somebody for that.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
Tom Connors, 28 Candlelight Drive, Holmdel. I'll pass these up here.
Sure.
I'll go one on each side. So what I wanted to talk about was the Main Street area, the old village area. About a year ago, we were here talking about the Tiger Mark that was going on at Exxon Station, and a lot's gone on Lower Main Street, as you're aware of. The first part of the pictures I took are all pictures of signage. If you go along Main Street, you'll see all different types of signage. You have some quaint old village looking, and you have some large monument signs. My understanding is they're probably all within the required signage that's in books now. I'm asking that we take a look at that because it's starting to look total disarray, number one. Number two is we have some really good things going on. If you've seen the work that Cruz has done for the Bank of America building, look across the street, Heritage Realty, they've done a super job there. You go a little bit further, Weichert redid that building about 2 years ago. If you look at 55, that's a total renovation. That was a building that was total mess, high grass, windows broken, etc. That's totally been redone and did a nice job. Mac Morris has been turned over to Diane Turton. They've painted that, cleaned that up. So that's the good.
It's all good so far.
Oh, we'll get to a little bit. So if you go east towards Village School, you'll see some pictures in there. It looks like a used car lot, 2 homes. I've been selling cars there. The cars are pushed up right to the street there and for sale. They've been there for a while. I don't think that's something that we would be allowing here, but evidently we are. If you go a little bit,
We'll have Dave also look at that. I don't think that's actually permitted.
I wouldn't have thought so, but they've been there for quite a while.
Thank you.
If you come a little bit further west, it was a house that was a foreclosed house about a year or 2 years ago. They cleaned it up, but now they have an old GTO car there, which I guess is okay. But they have a big car chassis next to it. It looks a little bit run downish. It doesn't look like it's presenting Holmdel correctly as you're coming into town. Unfortunately, we had a fire there this past week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it is now, and it looks like we're going to be a problem there for a little bit, but we probably could do things to clean it up a little bit. The old chairs are out there. It's just making it look kind of run down as we're coming in. I think of 35 as the Holmdel corridor and Main Street as a Holmdel corridor, and we're not seeing good things at that point in time, what's going on with the fire. Lastly, but certainly not least, is we sat here a year ago with Tiger Mark, and we were presented all kinds of plans. Tony, a longtime resident and businessman, really moving on in his life, sold the business, which you were not surprised to hear. The job they're doing there is just horrendously terrible. I've heard construction people have been in there, not happy with the work they're doing, it's taking a long time. The pictures that are in there, where there was an old window, they patched with new brick. Where there was an old door, patched with new brick. Where they added on a section to the side, patched with new brick. And you look in between, it's the old brick. I mean, they sold us a good story, showed us the pictures, the only old colonial area, we're gonna have it look like the village look. It looks just horrendous. And I'm concerned as this moves on, it's gonna look worse as we go on. If you go beyond that, you have, which would be the old flower shop there that's for sale. Hopefully who's ever gonna come in there is gonna improve it. And so there's a lot going on in that part of town, but I think we have to come back and look at it and understand what's going on, good, bad, and then fix it before it becomes worse.
Tom, just if I could add 2 cents. The administrator and myself met with Lonnie Lucina a number of times over the last few months to identify not abandoned properties.
Code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer. Lonnie is the code enforcement officer. We've identified all the abandoned properties within the entire community, and we are extremely active. And we've had some success with some long-term properties. I'm talking 10, 12, 14 years. So we are continuing to strive because it is a major eyesore. The signs and some of those things, but every single abandoned property, if feel free to email us. I think we have a hold on just about everyone, but
we actually have the form on the website.
So
on the homepage, there's a form for abandoned properties in town. You could go ahead and write down abandoned property.
Pretty much what I've talked about is not abandoned properties.
Okay.
They really aren't.
Right.
There was one on my block, it's finally sold.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yep.
which is
Yep.
9 years,
Yep.
which is just fantastic.
Right.
But what we're talking about is the look as you're coming in Main Street, the construction that's
Okay.
going on, and Exxon that just looks not,
Yeah.
that's a sales pitch they gave us.
Was that a zoning application or planning board? Do you remember?
I think it was the planning board because they were.
Tom, you were at the meeting, so you were there, you were friends with the applicant, so you're well aware of that.
I don't remember what meeting it
Don't
was.
even.
You were at the zoning meeting that
But
night.
it was concerning creating a tiger mark
I
there
understand.
and
I'm
added
just trying to
that.
find out if it was zoning or planning, so I know how to.
I will,
You know what,
I
I'll
swear.
take care of it. I'll find out what the issue is.
was not planning.
Yeah.
But they, the plans they gave us was this beautiful building they were gonna do, and what they're doing, it looks, if you look at 55, fantastic, gorgeous job. If you look at the old Bank of America, beautiful job. If you look at Exxon, it's as cheap as it can be done. And it's
I'll
just
have-
as.
Don, let's
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
Marty Flavor pull that application approval and have Dave look at it. And we'll
Yeah, and I'll
address
have,
our-
and Bob Fay actually too.
I mean, that doesn't sound-
But I think we should take a look at what kind of signs we want required in there, because we have a combination, people selling their cars, chassis. I mean, last year, we had a problem with someone, and they were putting all their clothes on their front porch, and just, with town. So there's things that go on that gives a bad picture of who we are.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you.
Jay?
Jamie Nello, 18 Ladler Drive. Respectfully, Mr. Catelli,
Louder.
you were at the zoning board meeting that night. You may have been friends with the applicant. Apparently, he was a nice gentleman. I'm sorry if you have to puff when I'm up here. But we fought that application because we thought we were going to have problems there, and we do have problems there. So I would look forward to you as the mayor to personally assume responsibility for that mess that's going on there on Main Street. It's a giant mess. It's an embarrassment to this town, okay? The other thing I'd like to talk about is the fire on Main Street, and I'm sure some other people may have some comments, but we are concerned in our area if there is a fire, what the realistic amount of time will be for someone to get to our house with a fire truck. And I don't want this to take up all my time, but maybe you can address that at some point. Before we get to that, I would just like to make an observation. We had a very quiet year here last year. There was no lawsuits, there was no problems, there was no tension. Now we have this issue with this survey. This survey was done in October. The raw data has been in. This now dog and pony show that's going to go on Tuesday night is probably going to be the same scene that was here. I'm sure the emails went out to the various contingents to get ready for this meeting. This is becoming a sham. And this is coming from someone who's really not against turf fields at the schools. Eric, you and I have spoke about it. If we can get comfortable with the environmental issues, and I do think there could be, I'm not against it. But we need to have a legitimate process here. We should have the raw data first, and then we should have a discussion of what the community needs. And at the last meeting, out of nowhere, we were going to raise $2 million of debt for a turf field because all of a sudden the people that really want them wanted them before the results were in. You're getting off to a really bad start, Mayor Critelli. The other thing I'd like to talk about is COA. And you said we can't talk about COA, but I'd like to say something I'm not comfortable with. There's a lot of muttering that someone on this township committee, possibly you, Mr. Critelli, had properties that are up for COA discussion. And whether they're logical properties or not, that can be decided. Personally, if you own some of these properties or your affiliates, and you pass them on to other people or other affiliates you've had, I don't really have a problem with that if they are logical properties to be used for the town for COA. And candidly, I don't know, or I don't even know if I care if you ultimately or your affiliates or friends make a profit on those properties if they go up in value a lot. But what I do care about is that if that is the case, and I've heard mutterings, I don't know if it's the case, if that is the case, I think you should disclose it, and I think you should be recused from those deliberations. So, do you own those properties? Have you owned those properties at all? Have your affiliates owned those properties at all? Oh, are we going to pull this again, Mike?
We're not pulling it.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it's very clear.
Again, I'm not against if you did. I just want it disclosed, and I want recusal.
Jay, you know, and I've already said earlier at the meeting, this is an active lawsuit, and there are court filings that the township is going to be obligated to make that could very well be related to issues you're raising, issues that other people are raising with respect to affordable housing, because there's many different aspects of it. There are two different objectors in the case. These guys can't comment on it, and so you're free to say what you want. You have a First Amendment right to say what you want. It's not a deposition, so these guys are not obligated to respond.
And the point is, I'm not against any of these things. I just want this to be a clean process. The final thing I'll say is, if this can't be a clean process, if this committee has to continue to default back to a position where people indirectly, directly, or through third parties, second parties, or first parties cannot vote on things that are for the benefit of this town and not be conflicted with their own personal pastime or affiliates, friend, family interests, I think they should resign from this committee. This committee needs to start running this town for the townspeople, not conflicted with their own agendas.
May I make a statement? I take offense. This committee and all of us care about this town. Why do you think we sit up here and listen to this stuff?
It's a thankless job.
It's a thankless job. And I'm going to say something.
What?
None of us here will do anything that is not appropriate. If it is that particular person, and stop me if I'm overstepping my bounds, will recuse themselves. So we're doing nothing here hiding. And again, we're limited to what we say. But if anyone up here has an issue, we are gentlemen and ladies, and we will recuse ourselves when needed. So I don't think you should concern yourself, because we're not lying to you. It will happen.
Thank you.
All right.
And maybe someone could address the fire issue? Maybe someone can ask that.
The fire people.
Yes, Barbara. I'm sorry, he keeps raising his hand behind you. Come on up, Barbara.
Okay.
I called you in.
Barbara Simber, 5 Deerfield Road. A couple of quick questions. Is there an update on the Rutgers survey or investigation into the flooding?
It's started, they're working on it. Yeah, they've gotten the PO, so they're working on it.
That's
Yep.
pretty fast. Yep.
Louder,
Another
Barbara.
thing,
Louder.
yes.
Thank you.
When we have ordinances, sometimes there's only a reference to a block and lot when it pertains to a property. Sometimes there's an address or a street name. Can we have consistency with providing street names? Because obviously, you know, it's just, we keep looking up the block and lot numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I draft them. I mean,
Oh.
in the actual ordinance itself, it contains a whereas clause with the exact address. I mean, the block and lot is the legal reference, but it's all in there, and it should be in every single one that we've considered.
Barbara, are you saying you don't know the block and lot number of
I
Holmdel?
try. I don't know my own at the moment.
A lawyer like yourself, I think you can do better.
I'll work with the clerk to make sure that that's easily identifiable. Because
Right.
It's absolutely in there, we'll just make sure that it's visible.
Okay. Back to you, Rob, while you're there. You had mentioned the Calhoun farm? Calhoun?
Callan.
Callan
Callan Farm, yeah.
And getting funds for preservation, and then I don't remember hearing anything after like an initial,
Yeah,
would be getting something.
it's, once we agreed as a committee to support that for farmland preservation, the process takes nearly 2 years. I'm very happy to say that it's gone amazingly smooth, and I hope to have a definitive closing date within the next month. So, there's a lot of matching funding that goes into that from the county and from the state, so that it minimizes the true cost for us as the taxpayers. But it's a wonderful piece that is an entry point into Holmdel, and it's a good start to preserve some additional farmland. So I'm very, very excited. So just be a little bit patient. I think in the next 45 days, you'll be excited.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking more like the owner, they're okay with waiting this whole process out.
He's been amazing through the whole
Yeah,
process.
that's great. That's great. The rec survey, I have to agree with what they're saying. It's not a confidential report. This is something this township has paid for, and I think the residents are entitled to have that raw data before there's a public meeting, in case there's questions on the data.
So I think there's a little misunderstanding. It's not a public meeting where we're going to be there. This is an information session for the public to learn more about the process, I think. Am I
Well,
wrong?
it's about we will be there to frame out the process and give folks an update on the process to
Right.
date, but it's really a public information session whereby we make ourselves available to listen and solicit input from people that attend the meeting, answer their questions, but really it's one of the methods that we wanted to provide the residents of the town to submit their input, suggestions, and recommendations that will supplement and, be in addition to the survey results. Because the survey gives us one slice of what those folks have submitted as their input. Then we have these other two committees that we solicit input from. We do the interviews with the leaders or department heads of certain parts of the recreation and open space assets in the town. But this is really an opportunity for folks to physically attend and provide input to us. This is not a presentation. It is not a public hearing. This is simply an information session so that we can listen and gather even further information from residents.
And I've been coming up here the last few years saying we need more of that. We need to listen to our residents. So
Okay.
I'm not against that, but you are running into an issue where you're going to have to decide what weight are you giving to what you're hearing there, as opposed to this survey, which was put out to the whole town, is done at people's convenience and done in private when they can more freely express their opinions, as opposed to the kind of characterization we heard earlier of what this meeting can turn into. So I just think you're going to have to, in your summary and your report, address how are you giving weight to one way you're getting information compared to another one. And I still think the survey results should be provided before this other session that you're having. My final topic is the firehouse, because when the last lease was signed, where we could put a truck in there, I came up and I said, is this going to be the situation again, where we just have a truck sitting there, it's not functional, there are no people, and all that. And Adam Perveduto was adamant that he would not have voted yes on that lease if that was not going to be the situation, if that was not the road that you were all going down. Sorry to keep pointing, but I haven't heard anything else now where the truck has been sitting there. What else is going on? I think I did see a call for volunteer firefighters was put out.
Yep.
Truck was sitting where?
What's that?
The truck was sitting where? Where was the truck sitting?
It was while you were mayor, and Pat was sitting there, and you signed a lease to put a truck over on Main Street.
No, we never signed
That
a
was
lease.
never.
An ordinance
That
was
was never
introduced.
went
I
Never went
didn't, I'm gonna be clarified, I brought an agreement together that was not approved.
It didn't get approved.
No.
So there's no truck anywhere over there at all
No.
now? Okay, well then that leads to a good question Jay was asking is, how do the residents over there, based on, I guess, past responses, get an estimate of what the time lapse is, you know, for them?
So just to clarify, just because there's a firehouse doesn't mean people respond from it. And unfortunately, of the 40 members of the Holmdel Fire Department, about 20 people respond. Of those 40 people, only 16 are Holmdel residents. We don't have anyone that volunteers in that side of town. We would love to have everyone that lives there to volunteer to become a firefighter. We simply have no one coming. In answer to your question, our response time is dependent upon where they're coming from. In this instance, there was already another fire event, so firefighters were already in their fire trucks and went directly to the fire. So it's subjective to the event depending on what it is. But in this case, the firefighters drive to the firehouse, they get in the fire truck and drive. With their lights and sirens, it depends on the fire, probably 10 to 15 minutes is probably the average response time. Because remember, remember, we don't have firefighters that live at the firehouse. They need to drive to the firehouse. So regardless of where they are, it's dependent upon the volunteers in the community, and unfortunately, we just don't have the volunteerism that we need to have people down at the fire, put a truck in the firehouse, no one would have responded from.
Right, and I understand all that. I'm just thinking maybe something more formally can be done as far as reviewing our response times maybe over the last 5 years or some time frame that reflects what the personnel is now. So
Right,
that,
and that's something,
exactly.
personnel is definitely the issue.
Yeah.
So the township committee and myself are looking at other ways to get participation in the fire department. And volunteerism may not be the solution. There might be some other options that we have to look into and maybe invest some money into it.
Oh, okay, good. Yep, thank you.
Sir, in the blue.
Good evening. Ron Emma, 32 Lagwood Drive. In the spirit of full transparency, I just have one simple question, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it. What's the downside of releasing it prior to the meeting? The results.
I don't think it's finished yet, but go ahead.
In my view, I think releasing it beforehand is going to trigger a hyper-focus on that information only, and could likely lead to a debate of the survey results, which this process is not fixated on. I think some of the prior speakers already noted, this is a balanced approach. There's a sequence that I believe will give us all of the inputs that we're trying to achieve in the proper sequence, and everyone will be given all the information ultimately, but if we release it before the meeting, in my opinion, it would trigger a fixation on survey results and a debate over data, which we will not be prepared to dissect and digest and present in that setting. That information will be presented in detail, the method will be explained, questions will be answered, and all the data and the trends and what that data indicates will be completely explored and examined with the consultants who helped us with that, the formal survey process. But I believe, and based on our prior experience with such matters, this next step is a public input process. It is not a presentation or a debate process. So that would be my reaction to that question.
My response to that would be, logically, to me, it would make sense that it would be released prior to the meeting if this is just an informational meeting. The data's been already collected and we've had it for a number of months. I have your opinion now. I would like to ask all of your opinion. What's the downside of releasing it? Or are you going to rely on the town engineer's opinion, and that's what you're going to stick with?
You know, we solicited proposals for this a year ago. We started talking about doing this a year ago. Part of the accepted proposal from T&M was to do this process. So I think we're kind of obligated to that, but I'll turn it over to the administrator.
Well, I think what maybe we're not understanding is that the survey is only a portion of the needs assessment. There's other factors that go into the recommendations that are going to come out of it. So there's certain like national standards, based on your population, you need X amount of basketball courts and things like that. So there's other data that they're going to be putting into this report. So while the results of the survey are important and they're going to be included, they're not going to drive just because the people that came out in the survey said we need to put in, a Taj Mahal, that's not necessarily what's going to come out of the report. Those are all going to be factored in. So the interviews, the public meetings, and other data they're going to use will be compiled into one report. So the survey is just an aspect of it. Think of a pie, and maybe it's 25% of the report, or 50, or whatever it is. So maybe that's the better way to try to understand it.
So the meeting will get you to the point where you feel comfortable.
Correct. That's one of the criteria. They had a bunch of criteria that they had to do. There was like 5 or 6 things. So it was the survey, it was the interviews, the public information, and a bunch of other things I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, it's clear that you're not going to release the results, so I'll move on to my second topic. The street paving.
Yes.
I think Eric mentioned there's going to be a schedule produced of when and where the street paving. Middletown Road in front of Bell Works has been paved
Correct.
halfway.
Yeah.
I live towards the south end of Middletown Road,
It's in bad shape.
and it's in horrendous shape. So my observation is, because I actually work at Bell Works, is the section in front of Bell Works, beautifully smooth. The section where I live, it's a disaster. So if there's a schedule, I don't know why they just need to keep going to the end, to Main Street.
It's all about money. Yeah, and we just had the conversation, the engineer and myself, this morning. Part of Bell Works is they provide us with contributions towards the improvement of that road as they get occupancy in the building. So we're about due for another payment. The engineer was directed today to start working on the bid spec for Middletown Road. So we see what the number is with the savings we realized last year. We should be able to get to Middletown Road in the summer, but don't hold me to it.
So is Middletown Road a priority on that list?
Yes, it's a priority, but it's funded differently because it's supplemented to the contributions from Bell Works. It's not coming out of directly from our capital ordinance. That's why it's a little different than some of the other roads, but it's a priority, yes.
So the money that comes from Bell Works, will that be going specifically
Towards Middletown Road,
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Okay. And lastly, just the firehouse issue. I was concerned when the firehouse was up for sale, and now it's been sold, and now we've had a major fire, and I understand it's a resource issue, and maybe volunteer fire department, as good as they are, clearly the response time to our end of the town, I don't think anyone would say is adequate. So maybe it is time to start looking at a different solution, whether that's a paid department, a skeleton staff. I don't have the answer, but clearly 15 or 20 minutes, which is probably conservative, is not really, shouldn't, in my opinion, be sufficient.
2 things on that. I had that exact conversation with Donna and a representative from the fire coordination within town, and we're looking at a lot of different options that are available, including possibly supplementing volunteer firefighters. I don't have a handle on that, but I am going to be looking at that seriously. The second thing is, the Monmouth County Fire Marshal told me the next morning that there was a significant amount of accelerant poured into that building. That's why it got so hot so fast and burned so quick.
So it's ours.
I didn't say that, because I'm not privy to talk like that.
Okay, fair
I'm
enough.
telling you, I asked permission today if I could make this announcement, because it came from the Monmouth County Fire Marshal's mouth. He said there's a significant amount of accelerant, our meters were off the charts. So that's why that fire got so hot so fast and it burned to the ground.
Is there any truth to the rumors that I've heard that there was other towns putting water on the fire before Holmdel was there to put water on the fire?
We've always called it mutual aid. I don't know whose water got on first, but there was a tremendous amount of fire apparatus there from all the surrounding towns.
So the answer is yes.
We can't tell whose water is whose.
Do we know what towns responded and were there first?
I know that I heard today that Hazlitt's was recovering from a call
So they were already,
They
they're already in the
their
truck, and they
trucks,
came
so
directly
they
in.
just pulled back out the driveway and came down, and it's a straight shot down Holmdel Road. We've done some good 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, Scott Goldstein, 24 East Lawn Drive. About the fire situation in Southern Holmdel. I've talked about this ad nauseum for a long time. I just want to point out that if you go onto the website for fire company number 2, they've identified 2 satellite locations, one here at Crawford's Corner, the other one 23 Main Street. Obviously, there's a disconnect. Just said, Greg, you just said that agreement never went through. Okay?
We'll
I just want to
update
say,
their website.
just say that there's a major disconnect. I hate criticizing, so let me offer a suggestion here. Years ago, Bell Labs had a fire company right in the building. Maybe we should be talking to the owner there about building some type of relationship. They've got plenty of garage space. I believe it could handle firefighting equipment. In addition, you could reach out to the people that work in the building to volunteer.
That's
Okay.
part of my conversation earlier this month. That is
Okay.
exactly something we've already touched on. Thank you.
Back in 2006, when fire company number 2 in Centerville was built, okay, I believe there was a study done, okay, to identify the need for more fire protection on the eastern portion of Holmdel. Maybe we should call in and have another study done to reaffirm where is the best place, whether we have adequate coverage, and what risk the people are at that don't have adequate coverage. Okay? And this is all about our town, and I think that's probably priority number 1. As much as I would like to talk about rec facilities, getting fire protection for here for people and the roads, paved, I think that's really job number 1 here. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Carol?
Carol Bomber, 96 Milltown Road, Holmdel. Just out of curiosity, how much did the survey cost all told, including T&M's costs?
Wait, keep that up.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Didn't you approve a certain amount not to exceed in the
I
contract?
don't remember.
A year ago.
I heard it
Yeah.
was 40,000.
40.
I think 43 sticks in my mind, but maybe it's 40.
So is this meeting that T&M is going to be conducting, is that included in that
Yes.
40?
Yes.
It's
That's part of
all
their
included?
requirements, yeah.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned something about there are federal standards for so many basketball courts per person, per population, et cetera, et cetera. Those aren't mandated by the federal government, are they?
No, it's just recommendations.
Recommendations, okay.
They wouldn't mandate.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, these are not statutorily, these are just, right, okay. The thing I wanted to, Dr. Piscucci mentioned at the last planning board meeting, I should ask the township committee this, all right? And, because evidently it was not in the planning board's purview, and I'm thinking, yes. And I had asked about if Bell Works was in full compliance and up to date with their agreed to contributions from the co-op affordable housing units, and I believe the answer was that the check was in the mail. I'm just paraphrasing that, okay? The check is in the mail for what? Because I thought they were supposed to have at least 34 units over there built for designated for affordable housing units.
So my understanding is they are obligated, well, you would know for sure, so I won't even answer the question. I think it's 34.
Yes, Mayor, you're correct. It's 34 units that they either have to build or they can make a contribution. And they have until 2021 or 2024 to do that. I think it was 7 years after the agreement was signed, if my memory serves me correctly.
So the so-called check in the mail is like a payment plan?
I don't know what check and mail means.
Okay. Dr.
I
Piscucci?
didn't use the word check in the mail.
No, I'm using that. I mean,
No, but just.
I think Bonnie heard
I
it.
understand that.
Bonnie
heard
it. He has options here.
Yeah, there's options he has, and he has 7 years after the redevelopment agreement was signed, so I think it's either 2021 or 2024.
Because to my mind, it seems a little bit
Yeah.
inconsistent. We have Bellworks constantly coming in for hotel units and variances and waivers and considerations on the original redevelopment plan. but they haven't been fully compliant with what they've agreed to in the redevelopment plan.
Yes,
So
they have.
that's not true.
Yeah.
because
Okay, well, that's
if
what I'm
they
trying to get
have
to.
until 2021 to make the payment or build the units, that would have been a stipulation in the redevelopment plan, which I'm sure you can read, so.
Right, right.
You know, it's in there. It's not like they haven't done it.
No, but what I'm
late.
saying here is we're giving, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. I mean, they're getting all these considerations, but they haven't fully complied with everything they agreed to yet. Because they have till
They will.
2021 to do it, correct?
But they're in compliance, they don't have to do it now, and there's no mechanism to wait until that happens.
As of this date, they are, and we are holding their feet
To the
to
fire?
the fire.
Yes, we are, doctor.
That's the,
Don't you worry, I'm there every day.
Okay. Now,
I'm old.
all right.
We're going to take 5.
Shall I continue or wait for him to come back?
You can continue, but we do have that 3-minute rule that everybody seems to be ignoring.
You've been so gracious on
I
that. I
have.
thought
I
perhaps I would get the
guarantee you,
same
it'll be
consideration.
back on the
Uh-oh.
22nd. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Mr. Collins, I asked you at the last meeting about any kind of vested interest from past or future political elected officials, appointed officials, having a vested interest in any of the designated properties for the affordable housing. You said it was a matter of litigation, you could not respond to that. I'm not asking you to respond to that. I'm going to ask you a simple legal question. Hopefully there'll be a yes or no answer, okay? If, per se, anyone in this township on the committee or affiliated or appointed or elected has had either a vested interest, direct or indirect, with the designation of those properties, would they have to recuse themselves?
Carol, if I were to provide, you're asking me to provide a hypothetical where I'd be providing private legal advice to a member of the township committee with respect to recusal, and I'm not in a position to entertain hypotheticals from the public. It's a creative attempt, and I understand where you're coming from making it, but you're welcome to kind of make your public comment, but I'm not going to be able to respond.
Okay, let me try and rephrase it, okay?
You can try.
Let me try, at least,
Okay.
okay? If there is a perceived conflict of interest, where someone has a pecuniary or financial gain, okay, could that not taint the process if they're involved in the negotiations and procedure going forward for these properties?
All I'm going to tell you is that my job is to protect and represent the governing body, and if there are any concerns from any members of the governing body, they would discuss them privately with me, and this is not the forum where I'd be discussing hypothetical legal advice that I provide to a member.
Well, I'm not saying, remember now, this is hypothetical, I'm not saying if you would do it
I
directly.
understand.
All right?
I understand.
I'm just wondering, I mean, I've seen it in other townships, I've seen it in case law, that if there is a vested interest that people have not disclosed, it can taint the whole entire process and throw the process out the window.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Fair enough?
Fair enough to your comment. You're
Oh,
allowed to
okay.
make your comment. As I said, I can't respond.
One other
but-
thing, the humane,
Valiant effort.
the humane ordinance that you passed,
Well, it's-
kudos, okay? I agree 100%. I would like you to take a little bit further. Mr. Rauscher mentioned the rabbits,
Yes.
okay? But we also have birds. We also have guinea pigs. You also have other animals as well that are being exploited by many of these pet shops. And I think maybe you should just take it a few steps further to include pets.
We'll take a look at that, Carol.
Okay, birds too, I mean, okay, thank you. You're sitting in my seat.
I'm going to read this, the low-income housing. Late last year, we were privy to some information, and I subsequently sent the township committee members
Little louder,
an
please.
email.
You can hold it if you want. You can hold it.
Okay, so I sent an email to the township committee. This is working or not?
You're going to hold it a little closer to you. Thank
Hello,
you.
hello.
No,
It's not working.
It's been on all week.
Hello?
There we go.
Okay. So, anyways, I just want to impress on the township committee, and I'm sure you're all aware, but I think sometimes some topics need to be sort of quantified. I know numbers are boring and the rest of it, but to get a feel for something this big, numbers are important. And I was just looking at the Exhibit A again, and from that, they have identified 4 properties, and they're going to tentatively build 420 units on it, of which 76 would be the low-income housing units, okay? So that's 18% of the houses will be the low-income houses. Now, the Bell property is 34 units that they've been assigned for low income. If you apply the 18% to them, which probably will morph into that, you're looking at an additional 188 units, which totals up for the entire project 680 units. Okay? So to get 110 units, we're going to be building in Holmdel 608 family rental units. Okay? More likely than not, these units will have children in them, which is wonderful. I love families. I have 2 kids myself. But the point is they come at an expense. So now you're looking at, these units may be costing $300,000 if they're built nicely. So taxes on something like that would be like $5,000-6,000, given what Holmdel is. But to educate a child in Holmdel, total all-in cost is $20,000. Let's say the marginal cost is $15,000. You're looking at a per unit cost to Holmdel, just considering schools, not considering services, of $10,000 per unit built. So on an annual expense basis, you're looking at $6 million annually if you build 600 units, not to count for all the other congestion issues and noise issues and all the rest of it. So it's a very, very important topic for Holmdel to address this with the community. I proposed that in my email to y'all. I did not hear, I heard from individually most of the members, and I had long discussions with them, but the next thing I know, in Freehold there's going to be a meeting with the judge. So everything moved along, no discussion with the public, and this is hugely expensive. I told y'all there's a very easy way to do this. Easy meaning mathematically easy, doesn't mean it's implementable very easily, which means work. But this is an issue which will define the town in the future. If you have 1 kid for those 600 units, you're going to get 600 kids in the school. We only have 3,000 students, or even less a little bit. So you're looking at a 20% increase. These are all young families. They're all going to be young kids. You're going to have to build a new village school. I mean, you'll have to think this through. This is super important for this town. It will define this town, I'm telling you. You'll only see it in a few years, but it will define this town. And so now if you go through the numbers, right, what I proposed was, let the town, since it doesn't have the lump sum money, let the town say to the developer, per unit built, 110. We think we need 110. We go to the judge and say, we, the town, are responsible for 110. And you subsidize the developer. So it's a $300,000 unit, right? Let's say low income means